If you had to think of the biggest and scariest sea creature that ever lived, most people would probably say the Megalodon, and for good reason. The Megalodon is the biggest shark to ever exist and is thought to have had the biggest bite force of any animal in history, being over 3 times that of a T-Rex. But was there an animal that could have defeated it? If there was, it would have definitely have been the Leviathan. This whale is possibly the most nightmarish sea creature that has ever lived. The Leviathan lived during the Miocene between 10 million and 5 million years ago, overlapping with the time when the Megalodon roamed the seas. Fossil records indicate that both creatures inhabited some of the same ocean regions, and given the Leviathan's 5 million year reign, it is almost a mathematical certainty that these two monsters crossed paths. The Leviathan is a fairly recent discovery, with the first skull being found in 2008 in Peru, and it was named after the biblical sea creature Leviathan. It is thought that this ancient whale was a member of the same superfamily as modern-day sperm whales and other giant extinct toothed whales, but it was in a league of its own when it came to size and firepower. Physically, Leviathan was similar in size to modern sperm whales, which are the largest of today's toothed whales, with a robust, stocky body and a massive square-shaped head. However, the Leviathan was a monster, measuring between 44 and 57 feet in length. And they weren't just long, they were bulky. Paleontologists believe they weighed over 60 tons, which is the same weight as 10 male orcas. This made it one of the largest animals of its time, comparable in size to the mighty Megalodon, the largest shark that ever lived. However, what truly set the Leviathan apart was its teeth. These weren't just large, they were ridiculous. And you can see this when comparing them to the modern day sperm whale, and it even makes the Megalodon's teeth look small in comparison. They are so big, in fact, they are the largest biting teeth of any known predatory animal ever, measuring up to a crazy 1.2 feet in length. That means that every single one of its teeth were larger than the famous Smilodon's fangs, and having a monster-sized skull of 10 feet long by 7 feet wide, the Leviathan had a lot of these nightmare-shaped teeth, 40 of them to be exact. 18 on the upper jaw and 22 on its lower. Leviathan was equipped to take down virtually any prey in its environment. The bite of the Leviathan was not only deadly, but ridiculously powerful as well. Its jaws were highly flexible, allowing it to open wide. So wide, in fact, it holds the record for the largest bite of any tetrapod. It might be easy to assume and predict that the teeth and bite force must be very similar to modern sperm whales, but you would be wrong. Sperm whales have no top teeth and only possess teeth on their lower jaw. These teeth then fit perfectly into sockets in their upper jaw. This shows they are designed to grip and hold large, slippery prey such as squid. This was not the case for the Leviathan, as their teeth and jaws were designed to dig deep into its prey, removing and ripping apart massive amounts of flesh. We can see this with how every one of its teeth are aligned in a certain way, so when they bite down, each tooth would overlap with another. This would have allowed the Leviathan to easily tear through massive chunks of flesh and even crush bones. You can actually see the wear and tear on these teeth of these creatures today, with marks that show how they scraped against each other as it slammed its jaws together around its prey. Looking closer at the jaw of the Leviathan, paleontologists noticed that the teeth are very deeply rooted and angled forward, indicating that its bite was made to withstand massive pressure and struggles with huge marine animals while trying to escape the Leviathan's jaws. Also adding to this creature's deadly teeth, a closer look at the skull, paleontologists noticed an unusually massive temporal fossa gap, showing it had huge temporal muscles. This is crucial because these are the primary muscles responsible for generating a powerful bite. They are significantly larger than the temporal muscles of both orcas and sperm whales, and for reference, the orca is thought to have the strongest bite force of any living animal today at 19,000 pounds per square inch, but the Leviathan's temporal fossa muscle was at least 3 times bigger. Unfortunately, scientists have never done the proper study on its bite force, so we don't have an exact pounds per square inch, but it's believed that the Leviathan could have chomped down with a crazy bite force rivaling that of a T-Rex, or even the Megalodon, which is estimated to have a bite force of around 24 to 40,000 pounds per square inch. But the Leviathan had more than just brute strength on its side. Like most modern day toothed whales, it likely had advanced echolocation. The Leviathan skull shows it had a massive supracranial basin that would have housed a spermaceti organ, which is a large fluid-filled sac which is made up of fatty acids and other oils and substances that help them focus sound and echolocate. We can see this with modern day sperm whales. Simply put, sound waves come in and pass through the spermaceti and then to the skull, which is shaped like a radar dish, which helps reflect the sound back out through the nose at a much larger volume, and by listening to the clicks returning like a sonar, it allows the whale to navigate and communicate with ease at great distances in pure darkness if needed. This special ability makes modern day sperm whales the loudest animal on the planet, being able to perform clicks up to 230 decibels. For reference, jet engines are loud enough to break eardrums close up, and they generate only 150 decibels. Scientists estimate 200 decibels could even be fatal to human beings. The spermaceti and skull was much larger on the Leviathan compared to the sperm whale, so this organ would have allowed the Leviathan to detect prey from even greater distances, communicate with others of its kind, and possibly even stun or kill prey with powerful sound waves. The Leviathan needed to eat a ridiculous amount of food each day. Most whales need to eat around 3 to 5% of their body weight each day on average to survive. That means the Leviathan would have to consume at least 4,000 pounds of meat every single day. But what exactly did these animals eat? It has been hypothesized that due to many of those features, Leviathan occupied a giant killer whale niche and preyed upon baleen whales and other large marine mammals. On top of this, they would have hunted seals and sharks, which would have been very similar to the prey that the Megalodon also hunted. However, their hunting strategies would have been very different. Leviathan had a much larger brain compared to the Megalodon, and being a warm-blooded mammal, the Leviathan would have had superior intelligence. And just like living whales today, it's thought the Leviathan would have been a highly social creature, and would have most likely travelled and hunted in big pods, just like modern sperm whales. This would have been the opposite to the Megalodon. Sharks normally are solitary animals. They typically live and hunt by themselves, joining up with other sharks only in certain circumstances, such as mating. However, the Megalodon definitely had some advantages over the Leviathan, like its size. Scientists estimate the Megalodon grew up to 18 meters, that's 59 feet long, and some scientists thinking it could have been even longer. And there's a lot of debate on what weight it could have reached in the science community, from 60 tons from some paleontologists, and others believing it could have reached over 100 tons. Even at the lower estimate, it makes it much heavier than the Leviathan. It is also thought that the Megalodon would have had a stronger bite as well. However, the Leviathan would have been much more nimble and agile, as well as having much more stamina over long distances. On top of this, they had a very impressive echolocation, which they would have used to be able to detect Megalodon from a greater distance, even potentially stunning them with loud clicks close up. And if the Leviathan did roam in pods like modern whales, it would have been almost impossible for the Megalodon to get a fair 1v1 battle with them. But the truth is, a fight between the two species probably rarely happened, as potential danger for either one of them would not have been worth it when they could easily go after smaller, defensive prey that would not fight back, rather than fighting something that can fight back and seriously injure them. We see this in big predators today, which avoid other big predators. It's just because it's not worth the risk. However, sometimes this is not the case, like orcas that sometimes hunt and kill great white sharks or even sperm whales, but this is rare in most cases, and they're going after younger sharks and whales when they do kill them. And perhaps this would have been the same relationship between the Megalodon and the Leviathan, with the two of them only attacking the younger or injured of the two species. But even these two giants of the sea were not safe from extinction, with the Leviathan going extinct around 5 million years ago, and the Megalodon going around 3.6 million years ago. Like many reasons species go extinct, it's thought climate change was a big reason for both of these animals being wiped out. During the early Pliocene, around 5.3 million years ago, the water cooled, which had a massive impact. Global sea level fell progressively during the Pliocene in response to the growth of ice sheets, which potentially trapped big groups in bays. These climate shifts dramatically impacted the ecosystem, causing zooplankton populations to surge. This boom had a ripple effect, allowing baleen whales, a key prey for both creatures, to thrive. As a result, baleen whales grew to unprecedented sizes, making them much harder to hunt. Meanwhile, other threats emerged, like the great white shark and modern predatory whales and dolphins, including the killer whale. And although the great white shark and the killer whale are nowhere near the size and strength of both the Leviathan and the Megalodon, They are both incredible hunters and would have had a similar diet. Especially how effective killer whales are at hunting in groups, they would have been capable of taking down massive whales like baleen whales in a pod. So climate change and the massive increase in competition for food was probably the reason both of these giants are no more. But comment below, if these two monsters ever met in the wild, who do you think was coming out on top? With a beak able to crush your skull in a single strike, towering over an adult human with a height of 3 meters, and running at speeds over 40 kilometers an hour, Forest Racids were the stuff of nightmares and earned the nickname terror birds. They were made up of multiple species of massive carnivorous birds. These flightless predators dominated South America for most of the Cenozoic era. They existed between 62 million years and 2.2 million years ago, and were apex predators for the entirety of the Miocene epoch. Many species of terror bird ruled during this time, with the Kelikin guillemot having the longest reign of them all, being the largest and most powerful. It could reach almost 3 meters high, with a preserved skull that exceeds 70 centimeters in length, with paleontologists estimating it could have weighed 250 kilograms. This animal was truly a freak of nature, especially when compared to his modern day counterpart. While the ostrich may be the largest living bird on the planet today, it's got nothing on the insane size and weight of the terror birds that once roamed these ancient landscapes. The Kelikin weighed at least twice as much as an adult male ostrich, with neck muscles and a hooked beak built for smashing skulls. It would have used its ridiculous size and strength advantage to murder an ostrich in a heartbeat. But it's not just their size that sets them apart, it's their raw power and thirst for blood that truly made them absolute monsters. The modern day ostriches are omnivores, with short, flat, broad beaks and a diet mainly consisting of leafy greens, plants and berries, and occasional small animals such as mice and frogs. The majority of terror birds, on the other hand, were terrifying carnivores. This was given away by their beaks, which have a strong downward point, similar to birds of prey we have today. This beak shape would allow it to both crush and tear chunks of flesh off of its prey. It likely hunted rodents, deer, immature horses, cows, llamas, sheep, sloths, and armadillos. And yes, you heard that right. This bird was able to take down ancient species of deer and horses. The evolution of the terror bird resulted in it becoming an apex predator. The bird didn't fly because it didn't have to. Instead, it put its biological resources into growing bigger and faster than anything else on the continent. It was the largest bird ever and the top predator in South America millions of years ago. Due to this evolutionary path, terror birds have one of the most unique killing techniques in the history of apex predators in prehistoric times. Paleontologists have discovered many skulls of the terror birds, both large and small. One thing these fossils have in common is how the beak is connected to its skull. A feature exclusive to the Forest Racids is the inability to move the beak in relation to the brain cage. This feature, paired with an incredibly strong neck, allowed them to have a very unique hunting technique, where the terror birds killed by striking their large beaks as axes with precise, repeated vertical strikes. Not only did the terror bird have this unique killing technique, but paired with the speeds that it could reach, made it incredibly dominant. With recent footprint findings in 2023, it gave researchers even more detail on the posture of this creature and how it would have walked and ran. Forest Racids' top speed varies from species to species, but it is estimated that they are swift and nimble hunters that can run at approximately 48 kilometers an hour. Reaching up to these speeds, terror birds were built for speed and hunting prey. To put that into perspective, Usain Bolt, the fastest man on Earth, reached the top speed of 44.7 kilometers an hour during his record-breaking sprints. Not even Usain Bolt at his fastest could outrun these predators. Their incredible speed, combined with their powerful attacks, made it impossible to escape. Using fossil evidence of the inner ear in terror bird skulls, scientists determined they likely had low-frequency hearing, which they would use to track and hunt their prey. On top of this, the new findings also suggest that the terror bird communicated using low-frequency noises the researchers added. This is very important because low-frequency sounds are great for long-distance communication, or if you are a predator, for sensing the movements of prey animals. If you ever wondered what a terror bird actually sounded like in real life, researchers have been able to recently recreate what they believe the terror bird actually sounded like with modern day technology. They've been able to use simulations using a mixture of different modern day animals to recreate a noise that the terror bird would have most likely made. All of the following noises are based on what the Kelican guillemot would have sounded like. Scientists believe competition with big cats like the saber-toothed tiger and other large predators is what finally led to the extinction of the terror birds. It's true they were once an apex predator and were able to achieve dominance in South America because that continent was isolated for most of the Cenozoic. However, when the Panamanian Bridge arose 2.5 million years ago, fauna from North and South America were able to intermingle. So basically, a lot more predators were introduced to their ecosystem from North America, meaning they had less access to prey. And on top of this, it is thought that the saber-toothed tiger became the new apex predator and actually hunted the terror birds. Therefore, the terror birds lost their dominant position and disappeared forever. With a bite force capable of destroying entire bones and growing up to sizes bigger than a bear, the Epicyon was a dog-like creature from hell, becoming one of the most scary, bone-crushing dogs to have ever lived. While prehistoric predators like the saber-toothed tiger, terror bird, and Megalodon are all well known, the Borophaginae are relatively unheard of. Nicknamed bone-crushing dogs, these apex predators were not only fascinating and unique, but their sheer size and power makes you realize how insane prehistoric Earth was after the dinosaurs. Many different Borophaginae have existed, with the Epicyon being the most famous. Made up of 3 species, the Epicyons roamed North America for over 15 million years during the Miocene epoch, with fossil remains being found scattered all over North America in places like California, New Mexico, Nebraska, Texas, and Florida. Since its discovery, further research on this creature has only increased how terrifying it was, with the Epicyon haydeni peaking as the largest and most powerful bone-crushing dog that has ever existed. The monstrous Epicyon haydeni was bigger than a direwolf, bigger than a jaguar, and in fact nearly as big as a modern-day African lion. There were 3 species of the Epicyon. Both the Cevus and the Elurodontoids were much smaller and slender than the haydeni, but even though they were smaller, the adults would still reach a weight heavier than 2 fully sized Labradors. But the Epicyon haydeni was truly a monstrous creature, with the adults reaching 8 feet in length, and when on all fours being 35 inches tall. Under the right conditions, the Epicyon haydeni could grow to the size of a grizzly bear, making modern-day wolves and even the extinct direwolf look tiny in comparison. On top of their ridiculous size, these predators had large, broad skulls which were adapted for a strong bite force. Putting it simply, they were equipped with exceptionally powerful jaws, which they mostly used for crushing bones effortlessly, which is why they were dubbed the bone-crushing dog. Paleontologists believe that Epicyons had an overall posture and body structure similar to that of a large, robust carnivore like a bear rather than a modern dog. This would have given it a significant advantage in physical confrontations with prey or competitors. In prehistoric Earth, a lot of animal ancestors were large in size, so Epicyons had to be big enough to hunt down overgrown prey. A peek into the Epicyons' diet reveals that they were the perfect killing machine that never let any part of their prey go to waste. Scientists discovered that their strong jaws and specialized molars made it possible for these killer dogs to make total use of their prey by eating not only the meat, but also all of the high-energy bone marrow as well. Further examination of the teeth of these dog-like predators revealed that Epicyons grew large carnassials, which were designed for shearing flesh and breaking bones. The molars were also stout and robust, further indicating their bone-crushing diet. The Epicyon hunted large herbivores, which were common in its habitat. This could include ground sloths, large rodents, and various species of prehistoric horses and rhinos. They also supplemented their diet with the remains of other animals. Due to their bone-crushing ability, this meant that the prehistoric dogs didn't always have to hunt for prey, since they could scavenge their food from abandoned carcasses. Their powerful jaws allowed them to consume the nutritious bone marrow left behind by other predators. Modern Epicyon haydeni fossils feature grindstone-like teeth that made it possible for these creatures to have a diet that included both meat, plants and insects as well. Based on their digestive tract, scientists understand that these animals were not the same as modern dogs. Instead, they had a similar digestive tract to modern-day hyenas due to their ability to break down bones, which makes their evolution all the more interesting. When it comes to prehistoric evolution, size is always a factor. As prey grew larger, so did their predators, and with competition for food on the rise during the Miocene, the Epicyon had to get larger and more powerful. There were three subfamilies of canid: the Borophaginae, the Hesperocyaninae, and the Cainani. The Cainanis are what we call dogs today and consist of domesticated dogs, wolves, coyotes, foxes, and others. These Cainanis took a completely different evolutionary route to the other two species. Both the Borophaginae and the Hesperocyaninae were a lot bigger and hunted much larger prey. The Cainanis were much smaller on the other hand. They hunted smaller creatures like rodents, so they had a completely different diet to the other two and were almost completely uncontested for food, which is thought to be the main reason they survived. The Hesperocyaninae was a close competitor to the Borophaginae, but due to their bone-crushing characteristics, bone-crushing dogs gained more nutrition, evolved faster, and were much more efficient hunters, resulting in the extinction of the Hesperocyaninae. The Borophaginae, and especially the Epicyon, went on to hunting larger and larger prey, to the point where they got so big and their teeth and jaws were so specialized that they could only hunt massive prey. Similar to how a tiger might struggle to hunt a rabbit, by gaining massive size, the Epicyon haydeni had given up its agility and speed, so they became animals that hunted by running in bursts. Despite having all the right tools to thrive in its habitat, the Epicyon would eventually suffer the same fate as the Hesperocyaninae. Its huge size was one of the biggest strengths it had, however, its massive size may have also been the reason for its extinction. Paleontologists believe that their extinction may have been due to very similar reasons of how the terror bird went extinct. The arrival of felids, like the saber-toothed cat, introduced a different type of predator into the prehistoric Americas. For millions of years, the Epicyons and Cainanis had full dominance over much of the Americas, but that quickly changed with the arrival of the big cats. While the Epicyon haydeni were relatively slow animals that hunted by running in bursts, saber-toothed cats were much faster hunters that preyed on the same animals. During the Miocene, we saw great competition between those two great hunters, and it's possible that these bone-crushing dogs would have been more powerful than a saber-toothed tiger, but the cats were clearly more efficient in hunting and surviving. Being able to adapt to new food sources and hunting methods is key to survival. Unfortunately, the Epicyons couldn't compete. Cainanis, on the other hand, remained relatively small. They survived on smaller prey, which were no use for the big cats, which guaranteed their survival. The rapidly changing ecosystem during the Miocene also played a big part in the bone-crushing dog's extinction. The global climate shifted and habitats transformed. This reduced the abundance of prey in the Epicyon's hunting grounds. A combination of all these factors ultimately led to the extinction of the Epicyons, with the rest of the bone-crushing dogs going extinct around 2 million years ago. Luckily for the Cainani family, the smaller creatures thrived, resulting in the evolution of animals like wolves, foxes, and of course, man's best friend. With teeth reaching a ridiculous length of 11 inches, muscular forelimbs that make a Siberian tiger look like a house cat, and capable of taking down prehistoric bison weighing up to 2 metric tons, the saber-toothed cat is one of the most iconic animals of all time. Whether it's through toys, books, or movies, almost everyone has been fascinated and entertained by one of the most famous apex predators that has ever lived. Despite its common name, the saber-toothed tiger is not closely related to modern tigers or other big cats we know today. It's part of a distinct subfamily of cats called the Megalodon. The Diegelourus van Valkenburgi is thought to be the first of many saber-toothed cat species on the planet. Emerging 42 million years ago, it was about the same size as a modern-day bobcat, and it was also one of the planet's first hypercarnivorous mammals, meaning meat was the only thing it ate. However, around 23 million years ago, during the Miocene epoch, we saw a real boom in saber-toothed cats. They came in all sorts of shapes and sizes, with each of them having their own unique characteristics. The Homotherum, for example, is known as the scimitar-toothed cat. This genus is noted for its shorter, more serrated canines compared to the other saber-toothed cats, resembling the blade of a steak knife. These teeth were adapted for slashing rather than stabbing, making them highly effective for inflicting deep wounds into their prey. Fast forward 20 million years and we find ourselves in the early Pleistocene, where the earliest fossils of the infamous Smilodon date back to. The Smilodon is the biggest and strongest saber-toothed cat ever and lived primarily in the Americas during the Pleistocene epoch. The Smilodon's most iconic feature is of course its impressively long canines. The Smilodon populator was the largest of all Smilodons and had canine teeth that grew to be 28 centimeters in length. That's 11 inches of pure nightmare. That's almost the equivalent of having 2 fully sized Subway sandwiches coming out of your mouth. But the big question is, why did they have such long fangs? Originally, it was thought that these fangs were used to penetrate the armor and shells of ice-aged animals like giant armadillos. Other experts used to think that they used their fangs to stab, jumping on the back of prehistoric bison for example, and slamming their teeth repeatedly into their prey. However, there has never been any evidence proving these theories in the fossil records, and now that we've learned more and been able to research further into these animals, we now know neither of these techniques would have ever been possible, mostly because their saber-shaped teeth were surprisingly fragile. Fossil records show they were long and flat, and not designed to twist or bend whatsoever, with many sabers with one or in some cases both of their fangs being completely broken off. Because of this, it's thought that the Smilodon would have used target predation, meaning they did not just kill any animal they saw. They carefully planned their attacks, finding the perfect prey to take down at the right moment. Timing their bites with precision was very important, as a poorly timed strike could risk breaking a fang. This is nothing like how big cats we have today hunt. Modern day lions and tigers use a combination of ambush and chase tactics to hunt down their prey, and when they catch their prey they rely on something called a throttling bite, where they aggressively clamp down their jaws around the neck of their prey until it suffocates. Smilodons could not use a throttling bite. However, they had a few other crazy features to help with this. The Smilodon was roughly the same height as a modern day lion, being around 3.6 feet tall when on all fours. However, they were much more robust and muscular, making them almost 2 times heavier than lions in just pure muscle. In a study from 2010, researchers x-rayed fossils of saber-toothed limbs and compared them to 29 other species of cats, including the extinct American lion and the present-day tiger. They found that the saber-toothed forelimbs had an outer layer of dense bone, which is about 15% thicker than expected. So they were much bulkier than lions and had an extremely powerful set of limbs, but their tail was short and stubby. Having a short stubby tail further proves the Smilodon were purely ambush predators. Big cats today use their long tails for balance and making sharp turns in pursuit of prey. This shows that they were built for ambush and close quarter hunting rather than speed and agility like tigers and lions. Their diet would have been hugely different compared to modern day big cats. They were not built for speed like modern day cheetahs, but for raw power and ambushing. Smilodons likely hunted very large herbivores such as bison, camels, horses, woolly mammoths, mastodons, and giant sloths. Using their muscular build and short limbs, they relied on stealth and the element of surprise to get close to their prey. Once in range, they would pounce, using their robust forelimbs to grapple their prey and sink their claws deep into the prey's skin. The final blow would then come from their ridiculously sized canines. They would have most likely severed arteries in the neck of their prey, or if they could not get to the neck, use them to pierce and slice a massive chunk from the body and wait for the animal to bleed to death. During the Cenozoic era, several different species of cats independently developed saber teeth. This adaptation occurred multiple times across tens of millions of years in multiple different continents. Whether it's the Nimravidi from the Eocene, the Homotherum from the early Pliocene, or the famous Smilodon from the Pleistocene, each developed saber teeth from their own unique starting points. This is a textbook example of convergent evolution. This is where completely different species that come from different parts of the world develop the same traits independently from each other. Another example of convergent evolution is dolphins and sharks. They are not closely related, but have streamlined bodies, dorsal fins, and flippers similar in function, which help them adapt to the oceanic environment. The question here though is, why did so many different species develop these massively long saber-shaped teeth? Before the Ice Age, the climate was much warmer, and prehistoric times allowed for higher metabolic rates and support larger body sizes. This means that prehistoric animals were much larger and harder to take down. A modern day cheetah, for example, would have no chance taking down a massive woolly mammoth, as it relies on clamping down on its prey's windpipe to kill them. So predators needed a different approach in killing its massive prey, so they developed these massive fangs. And that is why we do not see saber-toothed cats today, as prey are much smaller and faster, like deer and antelope. However, all good things have to come to an end, and that end came 10,000 years ago for the Smilodon and all saber-toothed cat species. This lines up almost perfectly with the end of the last ice age. This huge change in climate would have been one of the big reasons for the Smilodon's extinction. This environmental upheaval led to a decline in populations of large herbivores such as mammoths and giant ground sloths, which were a huge part of the Smilodon's diet. On top of this, early humans were skilled hunters themselves, competing for the same dwindling food resources, and directly hunted the Smilodons. The combination of a shrinking food supply, increased competition with humans, and perhaps even diseases ultimately drove the Smilodon to extinction. So you can thank your ancestors that we don't have any cool saber-toothed tigers today.